luck
I
with
know.
the.
So
Uh-oh. Maybe you'll have
it'll
to
be pretty.
borrow
It'll be fine.
Paul's. Do you
It'll
have
be
Some in my truck if you need a
I'll
pair.
get some in my truck.
Whoops.
We're rolling.
All right. Good morning. I don't have any. Hello.
Oh,
Hello.
How about I unmute you?
hi. Yeah.
Hello.
There you go.
I need that mute
There
button
you
all the
go.
time for you.
I know. We need to like a 10-second delay. John with a beeper button.
That would be all right.
I don't know. It wouldn't because I'd take advantage of it. So, good morning. Today's Monday, the 18th day of November, 2024. We're here in the Iron County Commission. Today, we've only got one item on the agenda. Today's a special meeting with the purpose of canvassing the November 5th, 2024 general election. We're going to start out our meeting today, as always, with the Pledge of Allegiance and an invocation. I'd like to invite our treasurer, Nicole Rosenberg, if she would lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, and Luke Little, our auditor, if he would lead us in prayer this morning.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America
and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Our beloved Father in heaven, as we come before thee this morning as a county to review the election that has taken place, we're grateful for the opportunity that we have to make our voices heard and vote in this country that we live in. We ask that we can have thy Spirit with us as we gather this morning. We're grateful for the blessings that we have and the opportunities that we have to live here. We say this in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen. Agenda item number 1, we will turn the mic to John.
Good morning. We're going to go through the Canvas statistics with you and give just a little bit of a report on the election. That person can join in if they'd like.
Sorry.
We do allow telephonic participation. The election went fairly well. We had, a few little issues that came up. There's always something that comes up. We had some technical issues. Like I talked about in our previous commission meeting, we actually had a few instances of voter intimidation, but we could never catch them. We had Chief Adams had people watching that box like a hawk. People were hollering, your vote won't count if you put it in that box. And
Oh, my goodness.
so
It counted, right?
they all counted.
Okay.
And in fact, that's a good transition. So we had 88.5% voter turnout,
Woo!
which we didn't quite break 90, but that's pretty amazing. We had voter registrations ebb and flow every day, but our active registered voters for this election were 32,149, which is more than we've ever had. We had 24,069 counted ballots in mail or drop box, 3,070 in person, 70 that were returned electronically. That's the overseas folks. And 1,246 votes that were provisional. So those were people that waited in line and either had a new registration or had moved.
Hey, I'm sorry, John. Will you go back to how many were in the Dropbox?
In the drop boxes were 24,069. So yeah, they counted.
And they were
So-
way more than in person.
Yeah, and that's always the case. We've had
Is
in
it?
person sometimes 1%. It was a bit higher this time. But yeah.
And versus mail-in.
Oh, we don't differentiate. That number includes both of those.
Oh.
Okay, in the Dropbox?
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah, I have a different report that I could maybe pull for that, but,
No, I was just
but,
curious.
more people are using the drop boxes, and we did encourage that. Yeah.
Yes.
No, that's fantastic.
Absolutely.
And then one of the questions that we have to answer is, does the total ballots counted match the number of voters given vote history in Vista, which is our tracking software? If no, what's the difference? And there were two new provisional voters didn't receive voting credit. We will be going back through the 532 to find them. Other than that, we were perfectly balanced, and so we're pretty strict about balancing. There were 144 envelopes with a signature that did not match the voter signature, 32 that were unsigned, 12 that were challenged for other curable reasons, and 240 ballots that were challenged and cured and not combined. So in other words, 179 were not cured. So 74% were not cured. And in fact, I was at church yesterday, and there was one of my friends was like, "Hey, my daughter's ballot didn't count." And I'm like, "Did she go in and get it cured?" Like, "Well, no." Okay. There were 45 ballots that were returned after the postmark deadline, and we were pleased because of basically Cedar City. They put the ball stamp on all ballots, and they didn't have a Vegas stamp, so they didn't. Not only were they stamped here, they didn't go to Vegas. And 45 is closer to a number that I would expect, not 10 times that like we had in June that got me all riled up. 28 ballots that were rejected for non-curable reasons. Despite our instructions, people will put the ballots in the drop box without the envelope. So you put a ballot in the drop box, it's not going to count because we have to have it in the envelope for it to count.
How many of those did you have?
There were 28.
Wow.
Yeah, and of the 73 were
What did
rejected.
they think that envelope was for? Just saying.
So we try to not change things too much because it
Confuses them.
It does, and you know, the instructions, while clear, I don't know, might be written in Greek sometimes. I think I say that sardonically because we make it very clear what to do.
And I guess the reason for that is because the signature is on the envelope. The signature.
Yes, and it has to be returned in the envelope.
Right.
Yeah. So we have to have the affidavit. We have to know whose ballot it was.
Right.
Because you got to
Yeah.
track it. You
And as a
gotta
reminder,
account for it.
That's very important on the first part of the process, but on the second part of the process, we want to ensure anonymity of the voter. And so once we verify the signature, the tab goes one way, the envelope goes another way, and the ballot goes the other way, and they're all in batches. So while we could reproduce the batch, what we're shooting for is voter anonymity, so we don't know how any one person voted. And it's funny how many times people call us and say, "Well, how did I vote?" I don't know.
I don't know.
What do you mean you don't know? And we have to explain, well, one of our mandates is a secret ballot, you know.
Yep.
Let's see. So, yeah, 1,282 provisional ballots were issued, 1,246 were counted, 30 were not counted, 3 were already voted. So sometimes people do it on purpose, but I always assume that they probably just didn't realize they already voted in the election, because the ballots come out 3 weeks before, and they're like, "Oh, I'm going to go vote because it's election day."
Maybe that was the primary, and I've got to vote in person, kind of a thing. Maybe.
Yeah,
I don't
yeah.
know.
2 were insufficient ID, and I just want to stop on that statistic, and this is where I want to brag on my people a little bit. Literally Friday afternoon, we finished processing those 1,282 provisional ballots, and that's because I bet 1,000 phone calls were made trying to get people to get their, and so to have 2 with insufficient ID is remarkable, because that speaks to the effort made by my deputies in following up. People are like, "Oh, the election's not over on election day." No, we have a whole bunch of work to do. I almost swore. We have a whole bunch
yeah.
of work to do, and much of that is processing the provisional ballots. 14 were incomplete form, and 17 were other. So 97% of the provisionals were counted, and that's pretty good. We shoot for higher than that. It's a little bit tough when there's just big lines on election day. We're trying to process them quickly. In other elections, you'll see that number higher because we can take more time with folks. But you get to election day afternoon, and it gets busy, and sometimes stuff gets missed. Of those 1,282 ballots, 532 were same-day registration, and that includes Election Day and early voting. But those are people that hadn't registered at all before. So many of them were, I've moved, but some were, it was a new. And that's about all I have for you. The statistics, we've kind of been posting them. None of the races have changed. I'll just quickly go through the races. Trump won. I'm not even going to give percentages. They're out there. John Curtis won for Senate. House District 2, Malloy won. Cox Henderson won. One of the interesting things, and kind of with my colleagues around the state, we had 4,999 ballots that had a write-in on them, and of those, 4,775 were write-in votes that counted for Phil Lyman and Natalie Clausen. That's remarkable. I mean, because write-in's a tough bar to get up to, but it also meant, many hours of work on clerks' parts to adjudicate each one of those.
That take you a lot longer this time because of that?
Yes, but so there's adjudicating write-ins, and then there's adjudicating everything else. So if you think like next year, we're going to have a municipal primary, and there might be a mayor race and a city council race. Well, that's 2 races. Well, this one had like 18 races on it. So there's a lot more chances for adjudication. And then
There's so many.
Even though he didn't win, even the successful write-in campaign of Phil Lyman, it just means a lot more work. But once you kind of get going, you can kind of see it quickly. The interesting thing is there's a little screen that gives us a preview of what they had written in, and it was easier to see Clausen than Lyman sometimes. And we're like, oh yeah, that's it. And so it went faster than you would think, but you still have to be careful. And then, somebody wrote Phil Lyman and Jesus Christ. That one didn't count. A lot of people wanted Mitt Romney for different offices.
Oh my
There
goodness.
were different variations of Condoleezza Rice was probably one of the more popular write-ins for president this time. Yeah. Valid write-ins are only the ones that are on the list.
I'd appreciate a mention.
Oh, and we had a write-in for Governor Michael Paul Blake.
It wasn't me. I didn't write myself in.
One of your kids, maybe.
I think he thinks he knows who it was.
I think I know who it was.
Really?
John showed me the ballot, and I recognized the writing. It was a family
Not the
member.
ballot,
It was
but
a
yeah,
family
Not the
right.
ballot, but the
Oh, that's
yeah.
hilarious.
Yes.
It wasn't my immediate family, but a family member nonetheless. And I did question that family member, and she said yes.
Well, in Iron County, you only would have needed 16,815 of those.
Yeah, that's funny.
Okay, and then for Attorney General, Derek Brown. For Auditor, Tina Cannon. Marlo Oakes for Treasurer. Albrecht for House 70. Ship for House 71. Uncontested Joanne Brenton won. Ken Robinson won. Karsten Reed won unopposed. Lucas Little won unopposed. Carrie Jeffrey won unopposed. Nicole. John Taylor unopposed for Iron School Board District 1. For District 2, Ben Johnson won unopposed. And interestingly, in Iron School Board District 3, Tyrell Eddy won over withdrawn, but that's because James Johnson got called on a mission and withdrew. So I had conversations with Tyrell and his family about that, and I'm like, look, I can't take that candidate off the ballot, but I can change the name to withdrawn. Durant won his judicial retention, so did Ryan Tenney, Keith Barnes, and Michael Fleming Levitt. Constitutional Amendments A and D were stricken. They still got a lot of votes. We still, the interesting thing about adjudication is we have to adjudicate those to move on. So we just adjudicated them even though we knew they weren't going to count, because otherwise that ballot still shows as unadjudicated. So Constitutional Amendment B won 60-40 in Iron County. Constitutional Amendment C won 80 to 12, 81 to 13. in Iron County. And finally, the school bond failed with a vote of 40.73% for and 51.29% against. Any questions for me?
No.
No?
That was actually more than I intended to talk.
Well, and I appreciate, so I had the opportunity to help audit the election.
Oh, yeah. A little bit different process this
A
time.
little bit different process. It was painful.
Mike didn't like it as well. Slower.
It's just slower, but it was actually good. And so myself and Karsten Reed and Joseph Peterson from the auditor's office, from the assessor's office, did perform the audit on the election. And it was, so the way that it worked this year, we usually kind of look at a ballot and look at the screen and make sure everything matches. This year, John had literally a stack of ballots about yay thick, went through each one of them and read off the votes.
The actual votes,
And we had to hash mark,
Tally.
each one.
each of those votes.
So when we
and-
made mistakes, because we made mistakes, what happened?
When we made mistakes,
Or like, how did the mistakes come about?
well, somebody would put or like forget to make a hash mark, or in one case, I drew two hash marks close together. But when our numbers didn't come out at the end, which was like 2 times, we went back and compared our sheets, and then had John go back and find that ballot, and go over it again to make sure. And in the end, it all tallied.
Balanced.
It all balanced.
There was one where I made a mistake calling because it was a yes/no, and I flipped it.
No instead of yes.
Yeah, and so we were off, and it was like, oh, no, that's on me. I mean, it goes to show the challenge of hand counting and just the supreme amount of accuracy that's now required. I think
And that took us that took us close to 3 hours.
Yeah. I remember talking to Carolyn Jones, and she would say, and they had the voting in her living room, and my mom remembers going in the 70s, and they're on Mid Valley Road. You probably went too there.
I think we did,
Mom's
actually.
house, yeah. And
Yeah.
my mom's like, think
Back
of the
in the
mud
day.
in her living room. But she's like, we would start at 6 a.m. and we would go until 4 a.m. the next day, because they had to have everything counted before they turned it
Closed.
over to the clerk. And there weren't as many precincts back then, but they were one of maybe 20 vote centers or polling places. Whereas now we can get more sleep, we're more accurate.
And I bring that up. I mean, that was tedious and a pain, but it's really nice to be part of the process, and kind of an honor to be part of that process, to just make sure that the election's valid, and to be able to actually put eyeballs on those required ballots to audit,
Yeah.
and know that that is the true outcome. Everything that you reported is exactly what we saw in the audit.
Yeah.
Those percentages play out to our tally marks. So.
And when we made a mistake, it was a human error, which is interesting. But
Yeah.
I think it's affirming too, and it's been good to have Blaine really joined in earnest this year, and he did a tremendous job. We got compliments even this morning, by the way. But a couple of things that I wish we could get more people out to are the post-election audit and the pre-election logic and accuracy test. The logic is that we make sure we put every machine through all of its paces, so that anything that's going to tabulate has to see every oval filled in and get it tabulated right. We want to make sure that it sees all the votes correctly. That's the logic part. And then the accuracy part is we do a test deck and make sure that, and whenever we make a mistake with that, it's the hand count of the damn test deck. And so we check the test deck against the different machines that tabulate those. It gives us a high degree of confidence going into the election, and then after the election, we tell the Lieutenant Governor's office how many batches we have. We put those into batches, and they'll say, "Oh, okay, great. You need to do at least 1%, and therefore, please audit batches X, Y, and Z." And so those batches that you got that I read from,
Yeah.
we'd only assembled those minutes before, because they give it to us. In other words, they make it so that there's no way we could somehow game it. Not that we would, but we find out just
Can't.
minutes before Pardon?
But you can't.
Yeah, we couldn't, and and so all we can do is we pull the data, and in this case we check the ballots against the data before we would check against the cast vote record in the system. So anyway, that's
good
way
process.
more than I meant to say.
No, but it's a great process, and you guys, I mean, your office does an incredible job.
I've been
There's
really
never
grateful.
been even a question of an integrity issue or a accuracy issue out of your office.
Thank you.
Just do a great job.
Intend to keep it that
Yeah,
way.
I'd like to say that too. John, we appreciate you and all the work to put out those other boxes that we needed this year and
It was a
make sure
different
that they
election for me. Yeah, thank you.
Appreciate that.
I'd like to just say that too. I think the boxes. I'd like to say kudos to the USPS for
Oh yeah,
what they did.
absolutely.
They rose to the
I
occasion. We
think
had
that's
kind
awesome.
of yeah.
I think kudos to you and your staff. And I'll just, if you're okay, Chair, I'll say
absolutely.
my piece now. I just, everybody knows I had an issue with the primary certifying the primary election. That was a different election. I will certify this one, but that one I still have problems with for the reasons I stated then. I know there was I know there's still some lawsuits that are pending in the Supreme Court and stuff that those will play out, right? How they play out.
Yep.
But I mean, we've had people reach out to us from the public, and I want them to know that we looked at their. I'm sure we all read and listened to them, but I do believe in my heart that changes do need to be made in our elections in Utah, and I did talk to some legislators that are running some bills this time. I still believe, and I know you'll disagree with me, John, but
I know Tusher's
I-
got one that he's planning on running.
yeah, I still believe that opt in for any reason. If you want an absentee ballot, you can opt in for any reason. You call and request a ballot, and you can do it for whether you're a missionary, whether you're military, whether you just don't. You're going to maybe be out of town by any chance. You can do that, but then the rest of us go vote in person. I think it solves a myriad of problems. And so I know of some bills. I know of one bill that's going to be introduced to take the election away from the lieutenant governor's office and move it to a secretary of state or a department of elections, and I would support that bill. But anyway, that's my piece. But good job. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, is there a motion?
I'll-
With that, I'll make a motion to certify this November 5th, 2024 general election.
Second.
Motion and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Done.
Done deal.
Thank you, John.
Thank you.
Thank you, Blaine, for your engagement.
Do you have something
here.
that you would like to say? Come on up.
You made the effort to be here. If
Yes.
you have something to say, you're welcome to the podium.
Other than staff.
Hey, Cedar City. My back still hurts from all that sitting on that day,
A long day.
but I really enjoyed doing it, working with good people and seeing a lot of people come out that had never voted before. There were characteristics, particularly the presidential election and the governor's election, that made a lot of people mad, and they decided, I'm going to show up, and they did. I saw in the news they're talking about the Amish in Pennsylvania showing up more than they usually do, and I saw that here with the FLDS people. It was really good to see them show up and participate in our community. We need to see more of that. I spent most of the time doing provisional ballots. Help them fill out the envelopes for registration, and then they'd go vote and put them in the envelope. And after everything was over, I thought there's something we ought to do, and this would be for John. We were just putting those envelopes in a cardboard box. I think we ought to put them in a locked box next time.
Yeah, we had that discussion. My thought was let's just put them in a ballot box. Just
Yeah.
a locked ballot box.
But it's good to have them separate. These are provisional ballots
Yeah.
over here.
And without fail, there's a provisional that ends up into one of the DS200s.
Yeah.
We tried to create the physical separation this time. I'm not speaking into the mic.
Yes.
And But I
Gotta
agree.
say it
The
again.
the reason that we decided not to do that this time, and actually, I think I'm going to just counter that in future elections, was because we'd like to have those provisional ballots in order. But I mean, we probably spent a combined 200 hours on working on those ballots, and we could spend 30 minutes putting them in order, because each provisional envelope has a number, and we can just put those in order. And so I agree, and that is a change that I plan on making, only because, like I say, of the 200 hour man hours that we spent working on provisionals, we could spend 15 minutes getting them in order, even with 1,200 provisional ballots.
Yeah. Well, I was thinking about the voters come along and they don't see that their ballot, their envelope is going to in a secure
We put it in a
place.
cardboard box. Yeah.
Yeah. So that kind of concerned me.
Well, it's a change we'll make, because I'd had the same thought, and Chanel and I didn't agree, but I think we'll just take the time to. I better not forget it, I guess. But anyway, I do believe, though, that the effort of putting them in order is not that big. So
I can see
I
that.
agree.
But I
It's
enjoyed
funny.
it.
The process evolves over time. Little changes like that. We sure appreciate you and the effort you made and the stabilizing influence you were on. It's a bit of chaos that happens, but
I was surrounded by a bunch of women helping me, or I was helping them, whatever.
You worked at the Cedar City polling location?
Yeah, I was at Heritage Center. Yeah.
Did you do the whole time?
Yep.
Well, good job.
yeah, that's
How
a
many
long
days
day.
was that?
That's awesome.
Well, it's Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday,
Yeah,
and then election day.
election day.
Well, how many
So-
hours? What was the times?
So Blaine, noon to 5 each day, with the early, getting there early, and then on election day, I think we were all there at 6, and then the last voter was helped at 9:30.
Something like that.
Yeah.
Then we cleaned the place up,
Yeah, there was.
put equipment away.
Well, good
Yeah,
job.
yeah, and then I just came the next day and but I mean that's a long day.
Yeah.
Like you say,
Well, I'm an airline pilot. I don't know how to do that. So
Yeah, that's right.
you've done it once or twice. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you, Blaine.
Thanks,
Thank you, Blaine. All right. If there is no other comments, we'll adjourn the meeting. Thank you, everybody, for your participation.